Twitless, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about Nameless issue 2, picking up where we left off with the first installment, where our nameless protagonist, literally named Nameless, that's not going to get confusing at all, goes to the moon to stop Zabalba, this massive asteroid that's headed to Earth that is got occult mystical significance. It's kind of like an end times arrival. And one of the world's richest men, totally not Elon Musk, is assembled a group of astronaut experts and then, of course, our occult expert, Nameless himself, to go to the moon and stop not only the asteroid, but stop whatever mystical supernatural nonsense is also coming along with it. So they land on the moon and immediately discover someone who has lost their mind and has committed the first murder on the moon. So we kind of start things off with a little bit of an investigation into that, and then our nameless protagonist explaining a little bit about what he has discovered about the nature of this asteroid and how it heralds or connects to a war in the heavens themselves, and how that war between ancient beings is now coming to Earth, and the ramifications are very dire.
So I want to say off the start that the art has been really enjoyable, just super enjoyable. Probably more enjoyable than most of the stuff we've read in a while, I think. Other than like Yggdrasil and and that like that's just
Irigil?
Irigil, sorry. Listen, I draw things. I don't write words so well, but the yeah, like it's clear it's not just drawn by someone who loves to draw, but it's actually kind of ugly a lot of times, frankly, in a way that reminds me of a lot of the charm and like joie de vivre of European comics, where like if it looked fun to draw, it's ready to turn in, even if the faces are kind of funny, and a lot of the details get sidelined. Like Nameless in particular is kind of ugly to look at. He's actually kind of strange. The cover is is the best attempt we see for this entire comic. I guess that's kind of typical. The cover is a little more conservative, but there's something that feels everyone wants to say like heavy metal when they talk about like raw UK comics. I don't know if the artist is from the UK. I'd be surprised if he wasn't, because just the vibe that we get with this, I think marries really well. It's not just that it's good. It's not just that it's has a lot of freshness and fun to it. It's that it pairs really well with this kind of storyline, and particularly from this kind of punk rocky uh, author from the UK. So it's just kind of it's hairy. It's feels like sketchbooky at times, but it can clean up and draw really cool spaceships and moon landings and stuff, and draw like an actual like a cosmic battle in heaven in the primordial past. Uh, it there's a lot of substance and character and breadth as well as depth with this style, and it's actually it's really fun to see play out. So I just wanted to start off that with that, especially because we oftentimes don't get a lot of time to talk about the art so much. So my hot take is the art's really doing something. It's really cooking.
Well, Chris is a unapologetic. He is a Yank from Connecticut, so
Oh,
maybe
fun.
so.
Well, congratulations to him, because he's pulling something off that a lot of Americans don't really try to do.
Let's take a brief pause to hear from the awesome creators joining us today and find out what cool projects they're currently working on.
Hey guys, if you love sword and sandal historical fiction with a healthy dose of ancient Roman and Egyptian fantasy mixed in, then check out Kyrie. We've got 450 pages printed so far, a fourth book on the way. Order your books today at curiecomic.com.
Modern day classic superhero storytelling. Get The Adventures of Omega Girl, issues 1 through 5, now on Indie Planet.
Thank you to our awesome creators, and now back to the video.
Speaking of the visuals, what I noticed in this issue in particular, there were, I don't know if this was intentional, a lot of references to the Alien film. And particularly, there was one scene where you had the crew members of the space station where they were embarking on sitting around a table as they recall all of the events that have been occurring there. And
Yeah, I was thinking of that. Yeah.
I don't know if that was intentional. It felt like a deflection because there are murder mysteries happening here,
Hmm.
but under very different circumstances. And it went into the crew being what appeared to be deranged, but it's because they were establishing a lot of these parallels with aliens. Maybe it was meant to imply or at least subconsciously plant the idea that
Hmm.
maybe there's an alien presence that's causing the crew to self-implode in this psychotic manner where they end up devouring themselves and destroying everyone around them.
I think it might be channeling a little more of an Event Horizon. It's
Yeah.
very, very Event Horizon-y with the sort of like, mind affecting shenanigans. And so I think it's more in that vein. Um,
Mhm.
so but I kind of see what you're going with the crew aspect of it. But were you talking about like Alien the film?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
the first one
okay, gotcha. Okay, yeah.
specifically.
Yeah, I definitely think there's probably some of that in there, but definitely Event Horizon.
Yeah,
I would say, yeah.
of course.
Um,
Yeah.
but what did you guys? One of the things that this book I think really sells itself on is the idea of astronauts with occult sigils all over them, and just this sort of like unnerving mix of like astronauts tend to be the idea of the astronaut tends to be like the idea of the pinnacle of the scientist, right? In order to even get into space, you're supposed to be a top tier level scientist. Like, we're not going to waste our time with just new middling folk. We want the best of the sciences in space. And Nameless kind of like turns that idea on its head by having an occult guy be in their midst, and then they're bristling. They're like, what are you doing? No, I have to draw these crazy weird magical protections on you because that's the only thing that's going to act as a barrier from what presence is coming on this asteroid. And it leads to, I think, the most memorable mental picture I have from this whole series, which is just a astronauts walking with like hands being and other sigils being painted on their helmets. So you have this merging of these two opposite forces, right? The pinnacle of science with the nadir of occult imagery kind of going on there. What do you guys make of that as an image?
So honestly, because a lot of the I mean the narrative symbolism just feels like a patchwork pastiche of like surface level topics that we may have heard of, and the sigils themselves are made up. Like it just feels like it's an acknowledgement about a greater world beyond materialism that allows that gives implicit permission for a lot of other stuff to happen. Like now it's almost in a way this is like Grant's strange way of acknowledging that we live in a universe where it would make sense for Lance Armstrong took communion on the moon, and that's okay, which my understanding is he did, which is kind of that's a ritual that doesn't have a materialist function, but does something, but means something more, and and
There is something sinister here, though, because that's a ritual that's more of like that could be as meaningful or as meaningless as a good luck charm. And here we've got
yeah,
an acknowledgement of a sinister force that is very real, or at least seemingly real. We're still dealing with what's real, what's not, so we can't go too far with what our senses tell us. But there's an implication that there is something very real, surreal coming for the planet, and we have to draw something somewhat sinister to try and ward it off.
Well,
So there's something like I
is
said,
it
there's something
sinister? Like,
ominous about it.
in this, like, fictional world, like, it sounds like good guy magic, right?
I see.
Is that
I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that straightforward. Like I think this because he's an occult guy. It's not like, oh, this is like the magical ward of safety protection that Doctor Strange casts from the Good
yeah,
Magic book.
that's all I thought it was, but maybe
This
maybe
is
I
like
wasn't
this guy is
thinking about.
from the first issue. Like when he delves into those dreams, he's confronting the woman with the crazy bug face and stuff. Like the forces that we're dealing with, he's never like pulled out a light sword and been like, I'll defeat evil with this. It's like
That's
he's
Doctor Strange. Like,
no,
Doctor
no,
Strange is into the occult, right?
but this is like knowing and using evil things
Hmm.
because sinister things, maybe not
See, you
evil,
know
but
more than we do. Like, I can only shadow box with stuff that
i'm only
like,
i'm
you
only
know where
going
the target actually is, so,
I'm going off of just like even the first two issues, right? The first two issues,
yeah.
there's no good magic. It's just like this guy wielding sinister occult forces.
Yeah, I mean, he's there to act as a translator, right? To explain possibly the meaning behind what's causing this asteroid to, uh, act upon its impending doom of striking the Earth and wiping out humanity. The way that they deal with the asteroid isn't with the occult. They just ram something into it, right, and try to knock it off of its trajectory. So there's a strange component in this story where you have to give a lot of deference to the fact that this character is in the position that he's in uh, during the plot. Why they're using somebody and giving him as much um, say or agency, who just has authority with the occult, as you mentioned, Twitless, but not like a typical scientist, which is what you would want to have out in space performing this kind of mission. Why they needed this guy to act as like a primary authority to try to stop this asteroid from destroying the Earth, it's not entirely clear. And it's almost like because it's a private business uh, figure that decided to put this entire operation together, and it's not a government agency or I guess somebody who would operate with the intent by committee of addressing a problem. Instead, it's just one radical persona, the Eye of Elon here, uh, acting out his fantastical, ambitions. Maybe that's the reason why he put this person in this position. He introduced an element of chaos, and maybe he's hoping to materialize something other than simply saving the earth. Maybe there is some deeper understanding or deeper investigation that he's hoping to attain from this mission.
I'm also kind of going off of the art too, right? Because the art has a sinister sketchiness to it. And even it just the ugliness that you were mentioning there, Matt, like the whole thing is not meant to like portray, I think, a even the war in heaven, because we get one image of that war in heaven, and the first couple glances at that, it's even hard to even tell like which side would be the good guy side. You know what I mean? Like you can kind of like suss out that like, one side seems a little more technological than the other, but I think that we're definitely not dealing with black and white morality, and so I think that helps feed into.
You know way too much, Twitless. I don't know what you're doing, but
No, no, I'm literally
I don't
going off
like
of
it.
just the issue. Like I'm literally
It
going.
should be if we saw angels and demons, we should be terrified of both forces,
Uh-huh.
right? We should be absolutely existentially terrified of both. And it's so weird to think, like, how are you gonna draw that? I
Mhm.
saw no wings, I saw no horns, I saw nothing in the classical library of symbolism, I just saw a bunch of, like, techno throw up going on, and, like, that was actually kind of interesting to see that sort of, like, that particular take, that takes intentionality, I
Right.
guess. That's all, like, I say like, kudos to the artist and maybe to the writer as well, for having the intentionality to not give us anything like what we expect, which actually is it's in the vein of the cosmic horror sort of thing, right? To, I don't know where my eyes can focus, like, I'm actually kind of in a like the fear is partly in the unrecognizability of the stuff that you're exposing me to.
Well, it is that image does, just that picture does seem to imply that one side is, like I said, more like technological, and the other one looks more Cthulhu tentacle.
Yeah,
So that
if
War in Heaven,
anything, yeah.
yeah, and then he says afterwards, right there, that like one side is kind of got a weapon essentially. I think that's what he says the asteroid is. He said the asteroid is a weapon in this war.
Yeah, it was like
Uh,
an unused armament of right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where they're going. They're going
Cool.
into the weapon at the end of this issue with their sigil protections and such.
Like a forgotten bomb from a ancient war. I mean,
All
that's
I
cool, right?
Yeah,
Like,
no, that is very.
yeah.
all I know is Twitless promised that we'd all be condemned to damnation for reading
Yeah.
I
Grant
didn't say
Morrison
that.
spells that are embedded in this story. So
I
thanks
just,
a lot, Twitless.
it's just interesting that Grant thinks that he's casting spells in this.
Hmm.
And because he is a well-versed shaman and does in fact do sigil magic and the rest of that, or at least believes that he does, that's I even think you know what, it's interesting that you bring this up. um I think he's doing something weird with the credits pages for these. Did you notice that that's not a typical credits page? He's like,
Yeah, it's a
yeah,
wall of text.
right. So I feel like even in how he's presenting like that, I don't know, feels deliberate to me. He's trying to put something in there. And
Hmm.
again, it could just be a masturbatory joke, because that's part of what like he's talked about, what he's done with some of this. Because like he
With this series, really?
not no, just with other comics in the past.
Oh.
Like
Hmm.
he's, but I'm just saying that like it's some of his magician stuff is meant to be play. What's interesting, I think, is that this comic, it seemed like he was playing less. This one, I think he's trying to do something more with it. And I think that's partly why it's a little more sinister. So
Final thoughts, guys. Metsy.
Yeah, I haven't read a lot of British invasion comics, to be honest, other than like Watchmen and maybe a couple other things. But I'm trying to think of what I've even read of Grant Morrison. So if nothing's coming to mind, well, maybe the boys, right? That was right.
Garth
that's Ennis.
Different guy. See, so like if this is his most like if he's getting down to business and getting serious here, Grant Morrison, and he's gonna expose us to his weird worldview more directly, and all he comes up with is Kabbalah and sigils. Like it just sounds like fodder for a pretty decent sci-fi story. Um, but that's not knowing what's coming. I so far I don't know. I was impressed with the plot, the writing, the dialogue. Not so much. The dialogue's a little self-congratulatory, self-insert type British.
That's
Yeah.
very Grant. Grant loves
Yeah.
to impress you with the book he read last week about quantum mechanics or solar flares or whatever.
Well, I'd just be like, yeah, like showing off that this guy's like a low class British person.
Yeah, somebody needs to explain what tractor physics are to me. Never
Oh, really?
missed that class. So,
Yeah,
Twitless.
but it was good. It was good.
Twitless. Final thoughts.
This is definitely a series I think it takes a little while. I think it's a series that I think it takes a while to kind of get where he's going with it, because he's juggling he's trying to be psychological horror with it. Again, that's issue 1 too, with the as well with the dream diving and stuff. We actually get less of that in this issue. Apparently it's more straightforward. It's more, hey, we're on the moon, here's the mission. So there's definitely less to dig into there, apart from that pitch of let's go inside this really cool weapon from an ancient war in heaven, which I think is actually a pretty exciting invitation. I think as a piece of serial media, I do have to agree that it's so bizarre that in comics that we're doing this so often now, where we don't treat these as individual installments, but as like puzzle pieces. And so it's like, oh, hey, this is the end piece. And it's like, well, by itself, it's just an end piece. And so it's not that remarkable. And you're only really going to see it when you get the rest of the puzzle. So that is, I think, certainly a weakness of trying to take a story that probably should just be in a graphic novel format and trying to like cut it into monthly installments. So, that's kind of I think that's an interest. I think that's a very, some of the criticisms that have been brought up, I think, are very insightful, and they kind of, I think, reflect on the mediums, the choice of how the vehicle in which the story is being told.
Thank you very much for checking out the video. Subscribe, like, and stay tuned for more.